It would seem like home rental values are going through the roof and forcing people not to be able to live in a certain location. We're going to show you now how it doesn't matter where you live in the country, even in the most overheated rental markets, you can lock in a low payment for a home that you own without having to move that far. So this is not any unique news story. Rental prices expecting to rise even more this year, forcing some to pack up and move. This article came out in the beginning of March 22, which is when we're recording this video. And it talks about how rental and the cost of living is causing people to move out simply because they can't afford the price increase. People are moving from major cities to more affordable options, which may be a strategy. We've talked about that before. But longtime residents, this is bad news if one is a renter, especially pricing people out of the market, essentially. Cities with the highest increase include Phoenix, Miami, and Tampa, which have all seen an increase of over 25%. So if you're living near a big city, you might think, well, I can't afford to rent. Some of these rents are going up 30, 40%, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and it's forcing people to make hard decisions. So what about buying a house? Well, a lot of times a person currently renting might think that it's not possible for them to buy a house. Well, how much would it cost? Well, our website, as you've seen at Homes Cheap, talks about buying a house for about $200,000. How much would that cost? Well, here's a mortgage calculator. For a home value, we put in 210 just in case you decide to stretch a little bit, with a 5% down payment, financing $200,000 at 3.8%, 30-year mortgage. Your total payment's $1,400. Your core payment is about $1,000, but then you add on your taxes. You're going to pay property tax, a couple $100 a month. Insurance, you might have PMI, you might have other things. Brings it up to about $1,400 at current rates, right? So you might think, well, what can I get for $200,000? Well, before you do that, look back at other videos we've shown. In every market there's houses available. We're going to show one momentarily close to New York City, the top market on the list. In fact, here is the most expensive U.S. rental markets. Top on the list, New York City. Median price $3,100 for rent. And it went up 26% in the last year. So if you were in New York City and you were renting for, let's say, $2,000 or $2,200, your rent went up to maybe $3,000. And all that rent goes to your landlord. You don't get to keep any of it. And that property you're renting also went up in value. If it was a $500,000 property, now it's probably worth $650 or $700. So not only did your landlord get your $2,000 a month for the last 2 years profit, they also benefited from your value going up with them having to do nothing. So how can you do the same thing? Well, you might say, I don't want to live far from New York. Well, what about, here's one example. Here's a house. Floatsburg, New York. Single family house, 3-bedroom, small house, 800 feet, but how big is your apartment? Got a little bit of land, a little bit of privacy. Well, where's that compared to New York? Well, it's an hour away. Well, you might want to live in Manhattan because it's convenient. Maybe you work there. Maybe you work in North Jersey. Maybe you work in Southern Connecticut. But if you wanted to stay in the same area, here's a house without even trying that's $200,000. You might say, I want to be closer. Well, I'm sure there's houses that are even a little bit closer, depending on what you want to do. There's going to be a trade-off. You might have to drive an hour a day, an hour and 12 minutes each way to get to Manhattan. If you have to go every day, maybe you work from home 3 days a week. But what's that trade-off worth? Well, if you are paying $3,100 and now you're going to be paying $1,400, you're going to be putting $20,000 a month in the bank. I'm sorry, you're going to be putting $20,000 a year in the bank by living here versus Manhattan. And in 2 years, you might have saved up $50,000, and this house might be worth $250,000 if it goes up at the same rate that the experts are saying it's going to, because they says prices expect to rise even more. So if it goes up even 10% a year, they're talking about maybe 20%. 10% a year on this house makes it worth $250 in a couple years, roughly. Plus, you got another 40, 50 grand in the bank. By making this one decision for 2 years, you could instantly have an extra $100,000 of personal net worth by making this move. Maybe you would feel bad about not being in Manhattan every day, but is it worth $100,000? Put it another way. If you lived in Sloatsburg or wherever else you could find, and somebody said to you, hey, look, if you move to New York City, would you be willing to pay $100,000 out of your pocket to move from here to Manhattan? Maybe you would. But that's the trade-off to make. So the answer isn't really you can't find a place. There's places to be found, and we're not going to go through a lot of other houses. It's just one that we found. There are properties available near every major city. Our next video, we're going to look at Miami, that are in the $200,000 range, that are decent houses. This is not a fixer-upper, not a broken-down house, that you could buy, reduce your monthly payment, and lock it in, because this payment of $3,100, that's what it is right now. Next year, it might go up $400 a month. If you have a mortgage, that mortgage is not going to go up. It's going to be fixed in place for the life of your loan, and all the money that's equity and principal payments go to you. Reduces your principal, and your equity goes up on the value of the house. So consider it. It's not for everybody. I'm sure you're going to have objections about why you don't want to do this, and that's fine. We're just saying this is an option that you have, and it could be very beneficial to your financial well-being. Even if you hadn't thought about buying a house, there's advantages of doing it. The one thing you might have to get over is, well, I want a house as nice as my apartment. It might not be as nice. It might be as big, but you're going to have a yard. You're going to have the ability to fix things up inside without your landlord saying you can't paint the wall. Not a bad little view there either. And this house isn't the worst house in the world inside either, is it? Right? Is it brand new? No, that's staged, by the way. This is fake furniture. But it is a house that's decent, that you could live in and fix up to your own tastes. And maybe in some period of time, if you do want some dream house later, you could sell this, take the equity you made on it, and put it towards your dream house. If you want really a 5-bedroom, 4,000 square foot house out in the countryside that's going to cost $700,000-$800,000, that's great. But if you don't get into the housing market now, you may never be able to catch that, because that house is going to be going up faster than you're saving money. Doing this can accelerate your savings and accelerate your personal net worth increase. Keep an eye on our channel, subscribe, and we will send you an update every time we post a new example of homes. Most of the time our videos are going to show you 4 or 5 houses in an area that are all 200 or less, that are maybe near the beach, maybe have acreage, maybe your work-live properties. We've done coverages on lakefront property. So subscribe and you'll get those updates. And good luck with your residence pursuits.